from the Denver Broncos Media Center, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
All right, welcome to Broncos Country Tonight. We got a big show for you this evening. This NFL free agency. The Broncos have been very busy early on. We'll start out with the moves they've made, bringing back Shelby Harris. They're signing Ronald Darby. Those two moves were the big ones that they made on the first day. Steve Atwater is going to join us coming up here in a little bit. But, Ben, let's start with Shelby Harris. I mean, the Broncos, at this point, they said they were going to make Shelby a priority. They did that. They brought him back 3 years, $27 million. What did you think about that contract?
Well, the locker room was eye on this one. You know, George Paton had come out and said he was a priority. You have to come out and make him a priority if you say that in your opening presser, and they did. They came out, they got the deal done. 3 years, $27 million. It's a $9 million APY, $4.5 million first-year cap hit. That's a lower cap hit in year one than I expected, and B, a higher APY than I expected, which leads me to believe that without looking at this, year three of that is basically a dummy year to pack some numbers in to make the APY look better. But you know, from what I understand, it's essentially a 2-year contract with a big team option on the third year. I like it. It brings Shelby back, makes him a Bronco ostensibly for the remainder of his NFL career. And, you know, he's been such a force in the locker room and a force on the field. I think it can't be understated. I'm happy for it. And, you know, maybe he could stop ducking me on that game of Madden.
Well, time will tell on that one. But let's go back to the impact on the locker room. The Broncos have developed a reputation for many in the league of a team that basically watched their guys improve on their roster and then watched them leave to go sign lucrative contracts other places. The fans had gotten used to that as well. I feel like this goes a long way with not only the locker room, but also the fan base, because George Paton got up there and said, this is a priority. We want to bring Shelby back. And you did it.
Yeah, you know, I think that's been kind of the culture over the last few years. The way John Elway did things was similar to the Bill Belichick model, to be honest with you, which is, you know, we're gonna import free agents every year. We're gonna keep trying in the draft, but if we don't hit in the draft, we're gonna keep bringing free agents in and go from there. And the Broncos had kind of adopted that philosophy under John Elway. And unfortunately, that meant guys that you drafted and developed you didn't always keep. You know, Connor McGovern, Matt Paradis, you can go on and on. And so I think that attitude had kind of pervaded the locker room. You know, it was kind of a thing where, hey, look, I'm playing for big money on my next deal. It's just not going to be here. And so I think George Paton is reestablishing the culture here in Denver. We grow our guys, we pay our guys. And so I think that's where he differs from Elway. Time will tell which philosophy is better, you know, overall. But I think for now, you've got a much happier locker room.
Definitely. No question about it. Let's get to the signing of Ronald Darby, 3 years, $30 million, 19.5 guaranteed. Another one that looks very nice in year one for the Broncos, and really for any team right now, trying to make sure they stay underneath that cap. Now, Ronald Darby is a guy that has some injury history, and that's what a lot of people are going to point to, some inconsistencies with tackling at times. But he's been productive, at least this last year. According to Pro Football Focus, he led the league for cornerbacks with 15 pass breakups. Not exactly a ball hawk in the sense that he gets a lot of interceptions, but he is around the ball. And I think for the Broncos, signing him to this deal strikes me as he can be a really good CB2 for you. And more than likely, the Broncos just needed to kind of patchwork some holes there.
Right. And he's obviously going to be the guy that's kind of playing, you know, outside the field side, as it were, at corner, and kind of take over the AJ Bouye. Whether you think he's a CB2 or CB1 or whatever on the depth chart, that's where he's going to play. I think the word to use if you're going to describe Ronald Darby is disruptive. He might not be, he doesn't track the ball well, doesn't find the ball well in terms of getting interceptions, but he is disruptive in deflecting passes. He's got active hands. He's good at pressing people, and he plays well in zone. His problems have really been when he plays in man with no safety help over the top. He's susceptible to the double move, and he's given up some big plays. If you go back and look at his tenure in Philly, where he played a lot of man, it was probably his worst years in the NFL. You go back and look at his time in Buffalo, you look at his time in Washington, where he played a lot more in zone, and he was a much more effective corner. And he's going to be playing a lot more zone here with Vic Fangio. So I think the scheme kind of maximizes him. There are holes in his game, as we've already mentioned. He's certainly not some kind of elite shutdown corner. That's not, you know, I think even he would be honest enough to say something like that. But he can be effective at times, and I think that he's a guy that fits within the scheme. We'll see if Vic Fangio can work his magic and turn him into the corner we hope he can be.
Yeah, and fit's an important thing here because you're 100% right. With the way they were using him out there in Philadelphia, it just didn't really fit with him well. And then, of course, again, he had the injuries, and a lot of people were frustrated by that, and it affected basically the view of him in the league. But he was CB1 for Washington last year. I mean, he was their top guy, so he has that potential. We'll see exactly what he's going to be here for the Broncos, and they might still add another corner here in free agency, as you've been reporting. Let's get to the restricted free agents here, as the Broncos made some decisions last night. It looks like Philip Lindsay is going to get an original round tender, something we talked about a ton on the show, sort of a do right by the player opportunity to give him a chance to test there. Tim Patrick, Alexander Johnson, both getting the round 2, which is also what we expected. They're both coming back. But let's focus in on Philip Lindsay. Like I said, not a big surprise necessarily here. What kind of market do you think Philip's going to get?
Well, he'll have an active market. Phil's a good running back. Don't get me wrong. He just doesn't fit what the Broncos do. They don't run outside zone anymore, and that's his strongest fit. So this is definitely a do right by the player. What you're trying to do is allow Phil, who has given 3-4 years of his life here to the Denver Broncos, to maximize his market and get on out there. You still have the opportunity to match if he gets a low ball offer, but really this allows him to maximize his offer. You'll see people out there that don't know what they're talking about trying to claim this is spin, but in the end, what this really is an opportunity for the Broncos organization to thank Phil Lindsay and allow him to maximize his dollar. And, you're going to find an active market. You're going to find teams like Arizona, San Francisco out there that could use his services and utilize him in a better way than the Broncos do, where he doesn't really hold up in pass pro. He doesn't really catch the ball well out of the backfield, and they don't run outside zone. So he's just not a fit for what they do anymore.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that the Broncos wouldn't have value for him. Again, they're giving him an original round tender. There is an option, of course, there to bring him back, but there's no compensation. That's the reason why you put the second round tender, is because it's an intent that you want to keep that player, like they did with Tim Patrick and with Alexander Johnson. Philip Lindsay, you're right. Just not a fit right now. The Broncos have their RB1 in Melvin Gordon. They'll likely go to the draft. I do have an interesting thought as far as an RB2 that I'm going to throw at you maybe on tomorrow's show. James White comes to mind a little bit. You're going to laugh me off the air, but I'm kind of intrigued. Anyways, all right, so that's kind of where we sit right now with the RFAs. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the big news that broke earlier today. Von Miller is coming back. Also, Kareem Jackson, not. We'll get into that when we come back right here on Broncos Country Tonight.
Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight. The Broncos have been very busy in NFL free agency to begin things. We talked about it in the previous segment with the guys that they signed, the guys they're bringing back. Well, a couple more names to talk about. We were wondering what the options were going to look like on Von Miller and Kareem Jackson. We'll start with Von Miller. The Broncos decided to pick up that $7 million option. He is coming back. According to reports out there, they did ask him for a restructure. It looks like they actually went to both Kareem Jackson and Von Miller for a restructure. Kareem, Von, they both said no. Von got to come back. Kareem didn't. We'll get to Kareem and the hole that leaves at the safety position here in just a second. But what did you think about the decision to bring back Von Miller?
I think it was the right one for both parties. George Payton and Von Miller had a get together last night, sat down and talked about it. George asked him point blank, do you want to be a Denver Bronco? And, Von said he does. And so George Payton said, okay, I respect that. This is going to be a prove it year for everybody involved by picking up this option. And then we'll worry about, since we couldn't get an extension done, we'll worry about doing that after that. I think that's beneficial for Von Miller, motivates him because he's going to want to cash in one last time. And I think it's beneficial for the Broncos because if Von is unable to come back from that injury and isn't as productive as warrants a long-term deal, it allows them to walk away at the end of it, no harm, no foul. So, I think it's beneficial for everybody involved. I think picking up that option, honestly, was the better way to go. It might seem like it's more expensive right now, but it gives you a better, clearer picture going into that negotiation than you would have otherwise had negotiating blind. And, I think that's probably not what you want to do. The other thing is, this is step 2 in saying to the locker room, we take care of our own. We pick up those options. You already got Shelby done. You're getting Von done. And then, Justin Simmons is next on the docket. I can tell you they've been talking. They're talking again today, trying to get that long-term deal done.
Yeah, and that's what George Payton said in his press conference, said we want to bring Von back. So, again, following through, how much did free agency, the fact that a lot of these edge rushers got around 15 to 16 million in that first wave, how much did that impact the Broncos' decision to ultimately say, 18 million for Von Miller isn't that much of a stretch?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. You went out and you went and looked at a hedge in case you let Von Miller go and Leonard Floyd, and then you saw what he got from the Rams, and you were like, okay, this is ridiculous. Floyd is if you're scaling that contract to what Von Miller gets, Floyd's worth roughly 75% of what Von Miller gets, and he's getting 80-90%. So that's the problem with free agency. In free agency, you wind up playing A+ money. You pay A+ money for B+ talent, and that's the problem. And so I don't think that the Broncos could adequately replace Von Miller's production at cost-effective means. So I think you look at this and you say, all right, let's get a motivated Von Miller for this year. Let's get all these other things secured. We get the do right by the player by bringing him back and making sure he gets his money, and we go from there. And we've got a year to kind of evaluate whether we want to draft somebody, whether we want to hit free agency next year, or draft somebody next year. It gives us options in terms of figuring out what the succession plan is for Von Miller.
And you can't bring back everybody. I mean, the one thing that I keep seeing from everybody, they're like, well, fan favorites Shelby Harris and Von Miller are coming back. We're thrilled. But Kareem Jackson had been a guy that the Broncos fans really liked because of his intensity. Philip Lindsay was a guy that the Broncos fans really liked. But keep in mind one other thing that I think kind of gets lost in this. This team was a 5-win team last year. Bringing back everybody and expecting different results isn't necessarily the way you're going to have to go here. You can't do it. It just doesn't work necessarily at the NFL level. You have to make some tough decisions. And I think if we came back on the other side of this thing, and I think when everybody has a chance to settle down, I think most people are going to say they're pretty thrilled that the Broncos got Von and Shelby if it meant they were going to lose Kareem and Phil.
Yeah, I think so. You're going to have trade-offs no matter what way you do this. If it were easy to just bring everybody back and add to it, everybody would just do that every year. And so that's kind of the thing in the NFL. The salary cap kind of makes it interesting, and that you have to kind of chum the waters a little bit. And yeah, it sucks that you're losing Phil Lindsay. I mean, he was a fan favorite, but to be honest, I mean, you talk about a guy who caught 7 passes last year, ran for 500 yards. I mean, to be honest with you, didn't Booker do more than that in over there in Vegas? If we're being honest. So, I think that as much as we all love Phil Lindsay and wish him success somewhere else, he just wasn't a fit for what they do here. And Kareem was productive. And I think he was very valuable for this team in instilling some veteran things amongst some of the younger people in that secondary. But, in the end, you're talking about a guy who's 32 years old, who had some issues and missed a couple of games at the end of a couple of seasons ago. He had some, I'm not saying he fell off, but that fall off is coming. Father Time is undefeated. And so I think the Broncos just want to get out in front of that. And, it's time to reset the position. You were going to do it next year anyway. Why not do it now and get cheaper there and figure out where you can allocate that money other places.
Okay, so you leave a pretty massive hole, though, that safety, because we've said this going into last year. We said that was one of our areas of concern, not because of your starters. We thought they were actually one of the best safety tandems in the league. It was more about your depth. You don't really have very much of it. And at least right now, the way we look at the roster, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what direction they're going to go next to Justin Simmons. He's coming back and they're working on a long-term extension with him. But now you usually don't like to set yourself up to need to go into the draft and immediately address a position. So what do you think the Broncos are going to do in the short term to make sure that they don't have to head into the draft and address safety in their first couple of picks?
Well, I think you look at the free agent market and see if there's a body that you can bring in that at least has ability. The thing about Vic Fangio's scheme is the safeties are kind of mirrors. You don't have a one high and a box safety. They're both kind of high zone safeties that can come down into the box at times. And so there's kind of an archetype there, and you can flip them either way. Like they're interchangeable safeties. So, I think that's beneficial in the sense that you can go out there and look and see what's out there. Somebody made an interesting suggestion that maybe Patrick Peterson and convert him to safety. I don't think that's likely, but that's certainly a fascinating, idea. And I'm willing to see if, George Payton is going to think outside the box like that.
Yeah, certainly we give you some versatility there, and the Broncos have had to dip into that versatility because of injury in the past. So I kind of like that. I think that'd be interesting. All right, when we come back, we'll continue our conversation about NFL free agency. Steve Atwater is going to join us coming up next right here on Broncos Country Tonight.
Welcome back to Broncos Country Tonight with Ryan Edwards and Benjamin Allbright.
Welcome back to NFL free agency conversation here on Broncos Country Tonight, joined by Broncos Ring of Famer and Hall of Famer Steve Atwater. What up, At? How are you?
What's going on, Mr. Edwards, Mr. Allbright? Good to see you, gentlemen.
It's good to see you, too. You got a horse growing out of the back here. Never mind. It looks good. Hey, listen, let's get into NFL free agency and talk about what the Broncos have done so far. We're going to start with Shelby Harris. Broncos bring him back on a 3-year deal. What did you think about that deal? How important is Shelby Harris to the defensive line?
Oh, man, I was super happy that it made my day yesterday, and I got some other news today that made my day today. But, yeah, I'm extremely happy for Shelby. He's been a, crucial part of this defense playing well, great job of stopping the run, his pursuit to the quarterback, him batting passes down to the line of scrimmage. He has a knack for that. And as you know, man, he's got some of the greatest hands on the defense. So, how can you not enjoy having a guy like Shelby back? But, yeah, extremely happy.
And Ben, one of the things that we love about Shelby is his locker room presence, and he's a vocal leader for that team. And I understand that the Broncos have there's some aging guys on the defensive side, but, considering how well they fit with Vic Fangio's scheme, once again, you just think about Shelby Harris. You don't have to fill that hole if you would have let him walk.
Well, yeah, it would have been tough to find somebody that would replace Shelby's production, let alone his ability in his way he is in the locker room. He's a gregarious personality, a motivator. He's fun. He's funny. He makes, he wants to get in there and get hard work, but at the same time, he's a guy that knows how to relax his people in that environment. Every team, every unit, every work environment needs that guy. When things get stressful, that they can kind of crack a joke or two to kind of help lighten the mood a little bit. Shelby's that guy. So, I think his value goes beyond all the things that he does on the field, the batted passes, the sacks, the disruption. I think it goes into being that leader in the locker room, being that fun guy who wants to work hard, but also wants to have fun while doing it, and reminding people what it's all about in the end. And I'm really glad that the Broncos got him back.
Yeah, people say I'm that kind of guy too. Really fun.
They don't
bring levity to this. No, okay.
All right, being shirt. He's that kind of guy.
Game recognized game.
Ben is planning for retirement already. All right, Steve, let's talk about the addition of Ronald Darby. Yeah, we'll get to Von Miller here in just a second. But the additional Ronald Darby, a guy that was a CB1 for Washington last year. He's had his ups and downs, especially with injuries over the last couple of years. What did you think about that signing?
Yeah, I mean, I was happy. We signed another quality cornerback. I know he's going to compete for that. Well, I mean, he may have it already, especially considering the amount of money that he was paid. But, I would imagine, he and O.J. Mudia will compete some, or will he and Bryce Callahan compete. But, I think if Bryce is in there, he'll be playing if he's healthy. But, yeah, I was extremely happy that we got one. I still think we need to solidify that position a little bit more, just because if we have some injuries throughout the season, you got to have that depth at that position. But, he's a guy that can come in here, play right away. He's not afraid to get up in there and tackle, does a good job of covering, and I think he'll be a good fit for this Fangio Donatell defense.
Steve, we have to talk about Von Miller because you mentioned it earlier, how important it was that the Broncos brought him back. Hopefully, he'll have an opportunity to be a Bronco for life, but this is a one-year option that the Broncos decided to pick up. And, I mean, again, we just talk about what he means to that locker room, what it means to the fan base to keep him. What did you think about it?
Yeah, I was extremely happy, especially when a guy's been so successful here in the organization. The last few years, we've had some down years. I love to see him be here and be a part of the turnaround and, having that success again. And, he's going to play a big role in that. You saw him out at training camp last year. He was set to have an amazing season before his injury. And I think he's just going to pick right back up where he left off. And we're going to finally get a chance to see he and Bradley Chubb be dominant on those edges. And I'm looking forward to them, keeping the quarterbacks up late at night.
I like that. But, again, Ben, it comes back to the hole that it would have left if the Broncos decided not to bring back Von Miller, because you would have had to fill that in free agency with somebody, kind of the same situation you're almost in with Kareem Jackson.
And again, it comes down to cost-benefit analysis. How much of the production am I going to replace for what percentage of the cost? And that's really where we're at with that. You look around the market, you look at what Leonard Floyd is getting out there, and you say there's no way we can replace a Von Miller at cost or below. So we you know what? Let's make Von give him an opportunity to become a Bronco for life. We got a one-year trial between each of us. He's going to come back. A motivated Von Miller on a one-year deal is coming back. We're going to get to see the best of what he's got, and then we can work toward a long-term finish as a career as a Bronco contract after that.
All right, Steve, now we have to get to a guy that the Broncos were not able to retain. They did not pick up the option on Kareem Jackson. That seems pretty significant right now because that safety tandem really worked well together. You as a former safety, can you talk just a little bit about what Kareem Jackson meant to this team and how big a hole that is?
See the tear. You see me the tear rolling down my face, man.
I thought it was allergies.
I'm
but
definitely
yeah.
disappointed by the move, but at the same time, I know that George Payton and those guys, they're under a tremendous amount of pressure to put together the best ball club they can, and also, take heed to the salary cap and the limitations there. So, I know Kareem Jackson will go on someplace else. He's gonna continue to play well. He's a heck of a football player. Brought a ton of heart to the defense. Again, when he come up and put the hits that he put on guys that were much larger than he is, that they got the guys on the defense motivated, and it helped other guys to play harder. And we're going to miss that part of Kareem Jackson's game, and somebody else will have to step in and pick it up. Hopefully my man Philly will get a chance to show what he can do. Justin Simmons, he'll be back in the fold doing his thing, but I think we'll still miss Kareem Jackson, just that fire that he brings to any team that he plays on.
Yeah, and you've been breaking down a lot of the safety prospects in the NFL draft on our program, so that's another direction the Broncos will likely have to go, but they can't just wait to the NFL draft to fill that position. Steve, we appreciate you, man. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a wonderful day. Go Broncos.
Appreciate that. For Benjamin Allbright, I'm Ryan Edwards. We really appreciate it. Thanks for watching Broncos Country Tonight.